Welcome to the PIO podcast, a place for all things public information related for police, fire, EMS, and local government. An open forum to learn, grow, and develop your public information skills. Your host, Robert Tornabene, is a public information officer with over 10 years in the field and 27 years of law enforcement background. In each episode, we will explore different aspects of the public information officer profession. Weekly, we will delve into the field of public information by talking to other PIOs. So sit back and enjoy this episode.
Good afternoon. Today on the podcast, we have Dionne Waugh. She is the Public Information Officer for the Boulder Police and Fire Departments. Dionne, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So, Dionne, you are the PIO for both police and fire in Boulder. How is that working out for both of you? For both?
Well, I remember talking about it when I interviewed, and they said, it kind of varies. It's usually maybe 60-40 police fire. And they're like, in reality, it's probably 70-30. And then when I started, it really, because of everything going on in the country the last year, it was really closer to 90-10 with more police and more fire. But I had gotten into a pretty good routine of how much I was doing with police and fire every week. So, once I kind of learned the ropes of how Boulder worked, I think I was kind of able to manage both sides pretty well.
Now, was this at the time were they still experiencing forest fires too at the time, or brush fires?
No, fires had actually, thank God, wrapped up a few months before I started.
Okay, so that wasn't all that much of an issue compared to what was going on earlier in the year.
No, I've managed wildfires with previous agencies where I've worked, and they're horrible. They're so overwhelming, and you never know when they're going to end. So I'm at least thankful I did not have to come in and start my career here with that.
I bet. So let's talk about your background. So what is your background?
So I thought ever since I was in seventh grade, I thought I was going to be a newspaper reporter and work for the New York Times. My degree is in journalism. I was a print journalist for several years. And then as I kind of got older, I feel the profession changed. And I kind of also wanted to make money to support my living. So I looked and kind of jumped on the other side of the line and became a PIO about 13-ish years ago.
So what other agencies have we worked for in the past?
I first became a PIO for Richmond, Virginia Police, and I worked there about 6 years. Really learned a lot about being a PIO. And then I worked for Jefferson County Sheriff's Office here in Colorado for 6 years after that as their first digital communications manager. They created the brand new position, and I was managing all the social media for that sheriff's office. And then started in Boulder about 5 months ago now, I think.
Okay. So that's why you ended up in Boulder, because you were from Jefferson County at the time? Did you make the shift from Jefferson County to Boulder?
I did. When I was in Richmond, it was interesting to learn how to be a spokesperson, and I really launched their social media. And that was kind of at the beginning of agencies using social media. And so I really kind of created a little niche for myself doing that. And then I decided I kind of just wanted to focus on doing social media. So that's what appealed to me about the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office job, that in beautiful Colorado.
Right.
And then after doing that for a while, I found I actually missed doing more of the media aspect side. And so I was looking for something that would allow me to kind of do a little bit of everything. And Boulder definitely has that.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful country. I mean, it's a beautiful part of the country to go to. I mean, amazing.
Very much so. Very much so.
All right, so let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. So you were relatively new, and as we said, you were there 4 months when the active shooting event happened at the King Soapers. So give me an idea of how your day started at that point when it came out. Were you at work, first of all?
Yes and no. It's kind of like I will remember the first 12 days because I worked 12 days really nonstop. And it's kind of like anybody who's ever been in shock. It's burned into my memory. It's both blurry and burned into my memory. And so it had snowed the night before. So the shooting happened on a Monday. but it had snowed the night before. And at that point, the city is pretty understanding and flexible because of COVID, whether you work from home or you come in. And I said, well, I'll work from home on Monday. And so I was working from home, and I had meetings. I had done an interview on something. And I remember I had a meeting with a coworker or with a colleague at another agency. And I was eating a late lunch, and then I got this notification on my phone, and it said something. The first notification came out, mentioned a shooting. And then my phone, just the notifications through our app about incidents, it just kept going. And I'm like, maybe this is an error message. This can't be real. And so I texted this colleague. I'm like, I think I have to reschedule our meeting. And I logged into our CAD system, and it was surreal. It was, I was reading the notes, active shooter, possible officer down, multiple victims. And I was like, this can't be real. This can't be real. But my phone it would not stop ringing. At that point, it was ringing, it was texting. And so at that point I was changing to go into work. I live about 40 minutes away, 30 to 40 minutes away, depending on traffic. So I actually have a unique command structure, and I probably should have led with that, but I am one of about 20 or 25 city communications professionals who are embedded with these different city departments. So I have 4 bosses. Okay. I report to like a deputy director of city communications and the director of communications, the police chief and the fire chief. So I called, both my civilian directors both had my job before me. So they understand. That's the good thing. They understand 100% how this job works. So I called Shannon, who is my deputy director, and said, we were talking about it because she immediately jumped into the CAD notes too. And so I've never moved so fast in my life to change clothes and get to Boulder. I'm talking to her, and we were coordinating the tweets as they were going out. I literally could not use my phone to do everything, and I definitely couldn't do it when I was driving. So we were coordinating, getting the initial tweets out, and I was racing to the scene and only answering my phone if I recognized the number, which was, from my chief usually, or Shannon. And just got there as fast as I could, but everything initially felt so surreal. It felt so surreal. I just was really hoping somehow it was just a horrible, horrible mistake. But
like anybody would. And so in your case, you had a little bit of backup then. So having your deputy director there to assist you in messaging while you were heading to the scene certainly made things, even though it was as surreal as it could be, maybe you were able to get the word out to the public a lot quicker than had you waited and attempted to do it while you're sitting at a stoplight or got on scene, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, and I've done that. I've handled my major incidents, and I have, tweeted from a variety of different places, like most law enforcement PIOs. But the rate at which my phone was blowing up, it would have been very difficult even just to reach the tweet button because of the notifications that kept coming in so quickly. And it was just much easier. Thankfully, that's one of the great things about Boulder is I may have been the point person, but this was a massive team effort, both with city communicators as well as regional PIOs who came in, and we all worked together, I think, very well to be able to communicate information as quickly and as transparently as we could with our community.
All right, so let me talk about that then, because you're only with Boulder for a relatively short period of time, so you had not really had a chance to coordinate or network with a broad spectrum of PIOs yet. I'm sure you had conversations, but you obviously probably didn't have any kind of network set up at that point where there's quote unquote backup coming in to help you out in a formal sense, correct?
So it's kind of actually a little bit of yes and no. From the Boulder side, I was still learning Boulder, and I actually met more of my city communications coworkers during this incident than I had in the previous 4 months. But thankfully, because I had worked at Jefferson County, I knew most of the regional PIOs, several of whom who just showed up. There was one from Westminster PD who beat me to the scene because Westminster is about, it's halfway between where I live and where the city is. She showed up and got on scene without me even I didn't call her, I didn't text her. She just showed up. She's one of those people, she understands. And she'd managed her own incident. She got there, she showed up, was at my chief's side until I got there. And she was one of many people who helped me get through this horrible tragedy. So kind of yes to no to that.
Okay, no, that's excellent, because with everything that's happened in this country, with the over 200 and I think 240 is the number I heard with this last shooting in California of active shooter events that have happened in the US this year. Even that number, it's PIOs don't quite realize how rapidly an event can unfold and how it can impact them without having that backup out there. So it's awesome that you had that connection, and these fellow PIOs knew to come in to back you up. As this unfolded, how did you determine the roles that were going to play out? Like, you had the PIO from Westminster, you have your deputy director. Obviously, as the law enforcement PIO, you're the tip of the spear behind the chief. But how did that play out in roles?
So it's actually kind of complicated, and yet it worked really, really well. So the city communications director came in, and I think it was only the second time maybe since I started that I'd ever met her in person. And she came in, she and I talked, I think, it was the day after, and she created a JIC, a Joint Information Center, literally just for information. So okay. There was that. There's also an investigative JIC with all the alphabet soup of all the investigators. But we had that, and then because it's actually started in Aurora with the Aurora theater shootings, we had another group of PIOs who were part of like another type of JIC where they were media liaisons for the victims' families. So we kind of had all these different groups, and we had started off twice daily meetings in the morning and in the afternoon. So I was kind of the point person between all those. So at times it was kind of overwhelming, but all these great communicators coming together, and we would figure out, okay, how best do we handle this? How best do we handle that? But basically it was multiple information JICs that came together.
That's awesome. So without jeopardizing anything about the criminal case, because I know this is still probably ongoing, I watched the initial messaging going out that day, but then your messaging continued for, I think it was the next couple of days, that it was pretty regular. It was very regular, as a matter of fact. Was that somebody specific within the PIO JIC, or was that you doing that?
It was all of the above. Okay. For example, during the press conferences, I was managing those, and I believe it was the city communications director who would live tweet it. And then there were times I actually, in the early days, I had to turn off notifications for all social media platforms on my phone so I could use my phone. But there were times I would jump back in. I'd try to monitor some of what was being said so that I was aware of what's going on and could address things. So sometimes I would jump into things. Generally, it was just kind of a mix of all of us. If there was a question, or if we were seeing tweets about a certain subject, people would come and check in with me. That was a really good thing, because they know all these communicators do a really good job, especially here in Colorado, people staying in their lane. And in law enforcement, that's kind of really critical, because if someone says the wrong thing or speaks out of turn, in addition to compromising the investigation, it could just spread the wrong type of rumor. Or even if someone's heart's in the right place, people, need to stay in their lane when it comes to what everyone's individual role is. But it actually worked really well. All these communicators, some of us knew each other, some of us did not. But after all of it, a lot of us are a whole lot closer now. I bet.
So holding a press conference indoors can be intimidating just with the sheer volume of cameras. But when an event like this kind of unfolds, and then you've got to hold an outdoor press conference, and you have not only local but national media there, and then in some cases probably international media, how did you uh, deal with that? I mean, obviously you're not alone, but you have federal, state, you have the governor coming in. You know, how did you coordinate all that?
It was actually easier than doing an inside one. One, there were still concerns about COVID, but two, it was just we didn't have to, have someone walk people in, and because most law enforcement, buildings are secure, and
Right.
trying to manage that many people up to usually a second floor, that was where it would have been, but that room was occupied by investigators and detectives. So it was actually easier to do it outside. We just made sure we gave enough notice. We just tweet out the information with enough notice, told them where to be, and we kept it in the same location. So they knew where to be. We learned from the second day how exactly to block off the street, where we would put our podium and the microphones. We really lucked out with the weather. The entire time we had press conferences, never had any weather issues. We couldn't necessarily control people who just wanted to walk up. Yeah, we didn't, there were no issues with citizens who just wanted to walk up or community members, but there was one time with the governor was there and he had security and there was someone walking up and I could tell some of the security was looking sideways just to see who this person was. And they just walked up to the level where the speakers were just to hear better. So on the one hand, you can't control who walks up or who may yell. As the very first press conference showed, you can't control people just
Yeah.
yelling at you. But, it actually was easier. And another reason is because I told our speakers, when you're done, give me the look, or if I feel you're done, I will step up and I will end the press conference, just simply walk back inside the building, because
Right.
they'll just keep asking questions, even, same question, different ways, or different questions that can't be answered for a variety of reasons. So that's what I told them. You walk away when you're done, I will handle it. So I think for the most part, it was actually easier because I don't remember how many were there the first night because it was dark, but there were 30, 40, maybe even 50. And you're right, they're from all over the world, different languages. So, and the other good thing was after they were done, we learned to keep that little block blocked off from traffic right in front of our building so they could continue doing their live shots, which I think some of them appreciated. They had the PD backdrop, and then I think it was day 2 or day 3, we had the memorial car out there and people were coming by to do that. So they had that as a visual, and that's important for them to tell the story.
That's awesome. So from a lesson or thoughts of how you could have done things better, is there anything you could give the listeners on how maybe they might think about it?
I know it's not that long ago, but it's hard for me to think of things to do better. And I might, because I'm still like most people, processing this in my own way. But I can say if you don't have relationships in place ahead of time, that will make the job infinitely harder. So given the incident, that what happened, which as one of our detective sergeants characterized it, these are the 3 most intense things that any law enforcement agency or officer can go through, which is a mass casualty incident, an officer involved shooting, and a line of duty death. And we had them all at the same time.
Right.
I think that for the most part, we did pretty good at getting information out accurately and as quickly as we could to the community, so they knew what was going on. So
Right. No, I agree. I think you guys did a phenomenal job, and with the incredible stress of having to deal with the officer involved shooting and the fatality. I mean, that puts an incredible amount of stress on everybody in an organization, and for you guys to do what you did under those conditions alone, let alone adding into a mass casualty incident, just absolutely amazing. And kudos to everybody from your department for what they did and how they did it. So congratulations on that. So you've talked about if you don't have those connections set up in advance to the other PIOs, how could a PIO prepare for an event like that to occur in their communities? So what would you say?
I would say a couple of things. And I think it's hard for people to think about because no one wants to think about it. But I think sadly it is also getting easier. It's just to have tabletop type exercises. As long as I've been in a PIO, we've always had training where we've talked about wildfires or other types of incidents, floods out here in Colorado. Those are pretty common. We need to have them, especially given the number of active shooters situations we've had out here. You need to practice those. Practice what would happen because what do you do if your chief executive, your chief, your sheriff is out of town? What do you do if you can't get to the scene? What do you do if it's all of these things? How and get to know. You have to get to know other PIOs because no one will be able to do this, but you can't do it by yourself. It's overwhelming, and personally it's overwhelming as well. So having those hard conversations to prepare for it, to know, okay, if I don't have cell service or if my phone is overwhelmed, who could cover for me? And here's one example. We also have, we're fortunate in Colorado, we have a lot of amazing organizations and good relationships. And one of those is the Colorado Fallen Hero Foundation. And it was started by the former Aurora Police Chief, Nick Metz. And what this group does is it's made up of different law enforcement members, some retired, some like me, just active as part of different agencies. And when an agency in Colorado has a line of duty death, they come in and they offer to help manage the funeral, and I've done that. I've helped with the media aspect of that for other agencies. And if they had not done that for us, there's no way we could have managed that, plus the investigation, plus everything else that was going on. So having like that, for example, was incredibly helpful. They were there the night it happened. And for example, I helped another agency a couple of years ago when they had a line of duty death. My friend was their PIO, and she said, Dionne, can I just give you our social media logins and you just run it? And I said, yep. And I did that for her. And when this happened, we got to that time, I said, Lauren, I need you to do this for me. And she goes, do you want to tell me what to do? I said, nope, you know what to do. I trust you. I don't need to see anything. I need to go be with my agency and grieve the loss of Eric. It's, having those types of relationships and talking ahead of time, it just will help so much. So
I agree. I had talked to Trent Ferris, and there's an interview with him coming up in one of the upcoming episodes for the podcast. And he did an anniversary video from his line of duty death that he had involving one of his officers from the sheriff's or deputies from the sheriff's office. Do you guys think that perhaps you might do something on the anniversary as a way to tribute to his heroism and to the heroism of the other officers that were there?
I think here's the thing. One of the other challenging aspects of this from a communications perspective is that, yes, we at the Boulder Police Department lost an officer. We as a community also, we lost 10 individuals. So that was also kind of part of our part of communications as well from the PD and the city is we had 10 victims here. And so we tried to be cognizant of all of that in our communication. So there are multiple layers here, and that's how the city is moving forward with, for example, a Boulder Strong Memorial to honor everyone. There's been a lot of honoring of Eric by a lot of different organizations. His name is going on the National Memorial, the State Memorial, and we're working to get his name on our memorial here in front of our building. So I think next year is going to be even more intense and more emotional with how these memorials are moving forward.
My mistake for not thinking of the other victims of this situation, and I was thinking more of just the agency itself, but there's such a bigger picture there. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, so lighten us up a little bit. We'll go to some rapid fire questions. Beer, wine, or bourbon?
I haven't actually tried bourbon. I'm a wine person. I just took a road trip through the Dakotas, stopped at a winery just because I liked the name of the wine that I saw and bought wine, and it was pretty good.
Okay. What is a life lesson you learned that you use every day?
So I'm a runner, and I started running just a couple years ago, and now have run 5 marathons. And I, in my life, never thought I could do one. So I will tell people you are stronger than you think you are. You can do more than you think you can.
That's amazing. What inspires you?
Oh, it's funny. I think I would have answered this differently before March 22nd, but what inspires me now is the kindness of people. Because I want to believe the good in people, despite what I do in law enforcement and what I see every day, and especially what we saw on March 22nd, but just the kindness of people ever since then, from these little things to far away, really inspires me to kind of keep thinking positively, and just remember that the world is overall a good place.
What is the best compliment you've ever received?
Huh. That's a good one. I don't know if I have an answer for that one.
Okay, that's all right. Sometimes I get you guys on these. Your favorite word?
My favorite word. As a wordsmith, I have several, but for some reason, I just like the word thicket.
Thicket.
It just, there's something about it. It's fun to say, but it just, evokes something in the mind.
Okay. Where do you go and what do you do, or what do you do when you need to reset?
That would be my running. A couple people thought I was crazy because I was training for my 5th marathon when all this happened. And I am proud of the fact that I actually did complete it about a month ago. So.
Oh, awesome. Very nice. If you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell her?
I would honestly tell her to start running, because that is one thing. Like, people either love it or they hate it. I totally, I'm good with that. People love or they hate it. But what it has done for me physically, emotionally, and mentally has made me a happier, healthier person. So.
Very awesome. Dionne, so final thoughts. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
I would share this. Never stop learning. Be kind to those around you. And just remember, kind of like I don't think I got this from Simon Sinek or not, but remember your why. Why are you here? What drives you? And remember that no matter what situation you're in.
I like that. That's good. So how can people best reach out to you if they want to learn more or possibly connect? And everything will go in the show notes. So, but if there's a simple way to connect with you.
Like most PIOs, I am horribly attached to my phone, but I am on all of the socials, LinkedIn, even Facebook. So any of those will work, or email.
Sure. And I will attach all that to the show notes. Dionne, I appreciate you coming on the show. This was outstanding. When it's funny, you were on my list of people to contact, and you put that out on social media, and I'm like, oh, great! I'm just going to grab her now. So I really do appreciate you, talking about the podcast and how you enjoyed hearing your counterparts doing it in other areas of the country. So they're going to get to hear you soon. So thank you very much for coming on the show.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Dionne. Take care and have a great day.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to contact the show, please email us at thepiopodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified of the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows reviews, please give us a review. We appreciate any review, good or bad. It helps us improve on each episode. Until next time, be safe.